as a practice, like from your early discipline temple life, what do you still keep in your lifestyle?
I think I keep the same desire to be a good person. Yeah, that's what I keep mainly. But yeah, it's just hard for me to keep, to have discipline. Because of all the discipline I had, I used to study 14 to 16 hours a day, every day.
As a monk.
As a monk. Yeah, as a monk. Good point. So when I actually left the monastery, I had so much freedom, I didn't know what to do with my time or my freedom. So it was just another extreme, So I think it's important, Buddhism says it, the Dharma talks about, the middle way, the middle path. Extreme is not good, even water can kill you if you drink too much. So moderation is good. It's very important to have moderation, to not have excess. Anything, if you have excess and you stop enjoying it. That's the way it is. But the point is not to enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. Of course, we can enjoy, but we always have to enjoy understanding the reality of that enjoyment. We have to be able to observe it and understand how it's functioning and what our mind and our inside, what's happening inside, all the mechanism. So we can enjoy, but as long as we're observing and learning from that, then it's productive. Otherwise, I don't know what the point is. You can enjoy all your life and you're still not satisfied. Yeah.
As a Westerner who's trying to practice Tibetan Buddhism, I sometimes feel like there's a gap, a disconnect. Like if we look at Buddhism as like medicine, it seems really well, Tibetan Buddhism for Tibetans, the way they think, their culture, it seems to fit really well. But sometimes I feel like as a Westerner, it's not quite the right medicine, always.
Right.
General principles, yes, but sometimes I feel like it's the right medicine for later. And somehow I need some medicine before then, or something. Just thought maybe you might have something.
Okay, 2 points. 1 point, sometimes medicine, you are your medicine. Right? So, maybe the medicine doesn't work, but because you believe the medicine works, it does work. Right? And number 2, I think you have to filter what works for you, because there's many things that work for some people, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody, because everybody's different. Thank God. If we were all the same, then, I don't know, it's just we are all we are different. Every person is different, and that's the beauty of life. Each individual is a completely different individual from the moment they're born, and through the experiences they've had. Each person is completely unique, and that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of meeting people and learning from people and sharing experiences. So not all the methods are going to work for everybody. So that's why also it can create some confusion, because you think, oh, this works for everybody, but it doesn't. So that's why you have to be able to differentiate them. But eventually I think Dharma, in its simplest form, is universal. So what I mean by universal means it's like everybody can relate to it, like a hug. Some people are less open to a hug, some people are more open to a hug, but everybody can relate to a hug or a smile. Thank you. So it's universal. So Dharma is the same. If you go to the simplest form, to the essence, to the nectar, then it's universal. It works for everybody. But you just have to find how it can work for you, and how you can identify yourself with it. How you can put it in practice, let's say. But I think in the simplest form it should not create any confusion at all. Yeah? It's very simple. Very simple. The main essence of Buddhism, I believe, is to understand our true nature, so we can help other people to understand their true nature too. And in that process, try to help as many people to have a good life. And also work with our minds and work with all the delusions we have every day. And it's just not one day, oh, I'm going to meditate today, I'm going to do 10 minutes meditation. Wow, I'm so important, I'm so enlightened. And then tomorrow I'm like, I'll do it maybe tomorrow. Doesn't really, there's no point there, you know. Of course, when you sit down and you meditate, it's super difficult at the beginning, like anything else. But you have to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then eventually you'll see something happens. Until then, obviously it's going to be a lot of confusion. But when that something happens, then you start to see, now I understand. Then slowly, 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 slowly. Right? But I think we all can relate to that because we all have the same inside. We have different personalities, different experiences, that's why we're different. But inside we're all the same. So it all works the same way for everybody. The same way that if somebody falls, they hurt themselves, and if somebody, like, or maybe a better example, that's a little bit negative, but like you like hot shower, and you don't like cold shower, in cold weather, for example. Everybody can relate to that. So it's a little bit like that, you know, like, you can, it's something that everybody can actually understand eventually, you know, if you actually start filter and try to, you know, find it inside. I don't know, maybe I'm creating confusion, I don't know. It's kind of difficult to explain. Yeah, maybe another question to clarify that. So, after you.
I wanted to ask about this. You were telling that you want to help people that is very lost to find some purpose for their life.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask if you find for yourself what is the purpose of life, what is meaning of life, and how can you bring, if you find it, then how can you bring this to people who is really lost? For example, junkie, addict people.
Yeah. I think like this planet, like Earth, is like a school. We come here to learn. And once we learn, we continue. And if we don't learn, we keep coming back. As an animal or as a human, we keep like inside the samsara. So basically the purpose in life is to learn and to be able to transcend that blockage we have, that ignorance. So intellectually we can learn that, oh, everything is, there's no separation, right? Intellectually we can read in a book, okay, there's no separation. But then, how can you actually put that in practice? Because from my point of view, the cup is separate from me, right? So that sometimes can be frustrating because you don't see how on earth can you actually eventually see that non-separation. But then, of course, if you look at the step number 10, then it's very hard to kind of really kind of inspire, like say, okay, you know, this is the right path, you know. But if you take the first step, then you can actually understand better. Most people want to go to step number 10 directly. But that doesn't work. You can't build a house without the foundation. You can't say, oh, I want to build the roof, or I want to paint the wall if there's no wall. Or I want to make the door, but there's no walls, there's no roof, nothing. But I want a really nice oak door. Doesn't make sense. First you have to dig a hole in the ground. That's number 1. So as long as we stick to the first step, then keep it simple, then it's good. So the first step is not to fall in the tricks of our mind. At least for me, that's like when I start to get angry, then I have to say, okay, check. Why am I getting angry? What is happening? Check. When I get attached, when I suffer from attachment, then I have to check. Okay, why am I getting? What is this? Where is it coming from? Observe. So don't let the mind trick you. Your mind can be your best friend, but it can be your worst enemy also. So that observing yourself all the time inside, constantly, I think that's very important. Awareness. That's the first step. Second step is try to have a good heart. So inside, not just outside. Not just smiling outside, but actually having positive thoughts. And when you have negative thoughts, try to change them. Or try to see where they come from. And most of the time, if you check, the negative thoughts, most of the times come from the ego. Because we have the ego, the me, I'm so important. And from that's the negative parts come from that. And then from that comes the suffering. We suffer because of the ego. So that's, as long as we have an understanding of that, and we observe it, and we see it, then that's the first step. And then we can help other people to start seeing that too. So that's internally. And then externally, there's many other things you can do also to help people. You can dedicate your life to helping other people, to have a better life. It doesn't necessarily mean to go to Africa and build a school for children, or an orphanage, or become a doctor and save lives in Africa. You can take baby steps. I mean, even doing click on a mouse in a computer is good enough, as long as your intention is there. Karma works with intention. So intention is the most important factor inside karma. As long as your intention is pure and is positive and is good, then the karma is most of the time is good. Like, for example, there's a story about the Buddha where he was, before he reached enlightenment, before he was Siddhartha, he had many past lives where he was born and reborn again and again before he actually reached enlightenment. And in one of those lifetimes, he was on a boat, and I think there was about 300 people on the boat. And so he overheard somebody that wanted to kill everybody on the boat. So he decided to kill that person in order to save the 300 people. So he did that. And then afterwards, once he was Buddha, he was walking with one of his disciples on the path, and he stepped on a thorn. And he told his disciples, see, the thorn is the karma for having killed that person in another past life. But because my intention was to save the 300 people, the karma is only a thorn. So that's a good example. It doesn't mean it's okay to kill people, by the way. No, at least that shows the karma. That if your intention is pure, then your actions, even though maybe the action may seem a little bit negative, it can have very positive impact. So it's very important to keep as pure intention as you can. And the intention is not only thinking about yourself, but thinking about others. So if I'm thirsty, maybe I offer water to somebody else first, before I drink myself. Things like that. If I'm hungry, I try to maybe cook food for if we're 5 people somewhere, then I'm like, okay, I'm hungry, would you like to eat? Maybe I can cook for you. Or anything, it can be anything. Life will bring you challenges, life will bring you situations. And in those situations, that's where we have to flower. Sometimes there are very difficult situations where we just cannot control our mind. We just lose control. Those are the most important situations. If you want to practice Dharma, you practice at that moment. That moment, if you can control your mind, if you can take over the reins of your horse, if you can be the captain of your boat in those challenging moments, then that's the best. That's real practice. And of course, there's so much more. I'm just talking about like the very basic Dharma stuff, like the very first step. Because that's where I am right now. I'm in the very first step. So we are all in the same boat. We're all in the same, in the same room.
About what you just said, okay? The controlling the mind on the situations. And the more liberated way to deal with this would be expressing what you feel, or keep it quiet and just ignoring what you're feeling at that moment. Is it expressing or suppressing? Because sometimes expressing can hurt people and hurt yourself, but you like go there and suppressing, so maybe you are just suppressing for later, it's going to come out big. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand, absolutely. Sometimes you have to make that decision yourself based on the circumstance. So sometimes it's good to tell somebody clean, clear, directly, with, just say it straight. Sometimes, maybe it's not a good idea. You have to be able to be aware of the circumstances.
How do I know those times?
You have to feel your heart. if your intention is good, then most of the time I think you can, if you're humble, and if your intention is good, and if you make sure they know your intention is good, then it should be okay. If you're humble. You have to be humble. Like for example, sometimes, even if you're right, and you know the other person is wrong, and the other person is trying to make like their point, blah blah blah, because this, because blah blah blah. Even if you know they're wrong, you just listen to them. You say, okay, yes, good. And then even if you don't say, okay, you're wrong, maybe they'll see they're wrong while they're explaining to you. But if you try to say, no, I'm right, you're wrong, then there's no communication. First step of communication is listening. That's the first step. If the other person feels you're open to their feeling, their understanding of their situation, then they will open to you. So that's why listening is very important. That's the first step. Then once they feel you are open to them, then they will listen to you. So it's a process. It's a process.
Hi. Yeah, you said before that you went in touch with different kinds of people, different levels, and maybe you can give me some suggestions about that, because I work as a social worker with refugees.
Wow.
So I meet people who face traumatic, experiences, and they come from different backgrounds and different religions, and sometimes have the feeling to share the Dharma path because so important to me and is helping my life. But I would like to, to find a universal way to transmit, what I'm learning, what I'm experiencing, to support them in some way. But I don't want to be misunderstood, because with people from different backgrounds, different religions, I respect all spiritual paths. So I don't know if there is a way, or maybe your experience with people and...
No, it's complicated. For example, when you read a book, so the writer, he's never going to know what the reader is going to understand. And the person who's reading will never fully understand what the writer really meant. So there's always going to be a gap that you don't really know. Yeah. But there's another part that you do. So I think as long as you focus on that, then it's good. But you always have to be aware that there will always be a certain level of ignorance between the communication. Like maybe I'm saying something right now and I mean something, but maybe you can understand something else. And I will never know what you understand. Maybe I'm trying to say something positive and you understand something negative. I don't know. That's something that we have to risk. And I think as long as you have a good intention and you talk as clear as you can, and you try to really show what you feel directly, then in a very human-like fashion, then I think most of the time the message reaches.
So for myself, for my internal, just for my feeling,
But you always have to be aware there is always space for misunderstanding. That's natural, that's a mind, that's a human mind. We always have to put things in boxes because we have to control. We are scared of losing control. That's why we wanna have everything in like that. And if it's not like that, if we lose control, then wow, we suffer and all this. But that's not the point, right? That's not the point. The point is not to put things in boxes or to be in control, because we can never be in control. We're not even in control of our mind, so forget about everything else. Number one, control your mind. Then you can take the next step. At least for me. For me it's like that. Yes.
How much can we control our mind if actually the nature of the mind is fluctuation and change, constant change, which is what everything is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the nature of the mind is change, but there's a lot more to that, right? So our mind can, it's like a hallucination. Hallucination? Hallucination. So our mind is hallucinating. the reality is not what our mind tells us. So, for example, we cannot believe everything our mind tells us. What can you believe? What is real? Like, okay, this table is real. Like, so, okay, we say, okay, so this is solid, this is real, I can see it, I can touch it. You can see it, you can touch it. But then maybe you read the text, and the text says something else. So then how do I know what's real, what's not real? That's very, like, that's something that we are always struggling with. And the mind is changing constantly. That's true. But there's so much more to that. It's actually, it tricks us into suffering. It wants us to suffer. The mind wants us to suffer. Sorry?
Why?
Why? Because then it wins. Then it controls you. We let the mind control us. You think, huh? Sorry?
Is the mind evil? Is it the same like evil?
I don't know. I don't want to contradict Buddhism or anything. If I do, please let me know. But for me, the mind is like the brain. The brain is like thinking, you know, the thoughts. So sometimes when you can't fall asleep at night, it's because you keep thinking. And you cannot fall asleep as long as you're thinking. Because in order to fall asleep, you have to stop thinking. So many times, like, we fall asleep, we're thinking, and then we get so tired, we stop thinking, then we fall asleep. Yeah? But if you can actually manually turn off the mind, stop thinking, and then breathe in, breathe out slowly, and then go into the sleep state manually, that's a big step. That's meditation already, for example. But what was I talking about before that? Forgot. The mind, something else? Oh yeah. So the mind wants to win, right? So basically we have to think about the mind like a tool. Yeah? So it's not like, okay, we are the hammer. You are not the hammer. You use the hammer to build a house, or to make a chair, or to put in the nail, but you are not the hammer. You use the hammer as a tool. So the mind is very similar to that. You can use the mind, the thoughts, as a tool to understand life, to be able to communicate, to write books, to cook, to do all these different amazing things. If you think about it, the thought is so powerful. Just here right now, like starting from the mic, the cup, the table, everything here. What's natural here? Maybe the flowers. Even the flowers have been cut and put in a cup. That's also done by the mind. The flowers are natural, so they came out by themselves. What else? Maybe only the flowers here have not been created by the mind. The wood, the nature of the wood is of course natural, but the way it's been put, the way it's been cut, everything was created by the mind. From the plains to the cities, to everything that you see today that has been transformed from its natural form has been created by the mind. That's the power of the mind, of the thought. So everything you see that's been touched by a human mind, hand had to go through the process of somebody thinking about it. Somebody had to think about, okay, I want to build something that flies. And then slowly the process, it happened that finally they were able to build a plane. Right? But that's the power of the mind. Like now when you go out, you can check, you can look, everything, what has been created by the mind. That's how powerful the thoughts are. That's why it's so important to really keep control, because it has a lot of power. If you think negative thoughts, you may think it's not affecting anybody, but it is. Even your aura changes. You get black aura. I don't know. I'm guessing. Maybe gray. But if you have positive thoughts, your aura becomes like orange, green, purple. So the thoughts are very, very important. So you cannot become a slave to your thoughts. You should not let your mind control you. That's I think basic. If you let your mind control you, then you're lost. Game over. Then you suffer, and then you fall more. Yeah.
Did you ever had psychological discussions or help or just talks with a psychologist or psychotherapist?
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure I have.
In which
Huh?
In which case?
No, I think maybe. Actually, right now I don't remember. But I'm sure I've had conversations with psychologists or psychotherapists.
Did you learn
But
something?
did I learn? Oh yeah, of course I did. I'm sure I did learn something. Actually, I did study a little bit of Western psychology. I did study like some Freud and all this. But yeah, I don't know. I just didn't identify myself with that at all. So for me, it was good information to learn, but it didn't really. It wasn't that useful for me, like to put in practice or to actually keep it as something useful for the future. It's good to understand. Of course, I didn't learn enough. I just learned a little bit. So the little bit I can't really talk about. But yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes you have to you can't just take all the information, because then you just have too much information. Then you don't know what to do with it. So you have to be able to filter and say, okay, this works for me. So then you keep that, and then the rest you can. Like for me, I forget sometimes.
Yeah. What do you think about the future? And I'm asking in a perspective of living in the moment. That's great, but I have a feeling that we're closing our eyes on the future in many ways. And you know, how do you see the future of humanity and the future of the planet?
It's a good question. I think that we need the planet, but the planet doesn't need us at all. So some people describe the humans as a parasite or a virus. In the Matrix, I think was it Agent Smith? He says humans are like a virus. No, they don't think about that like that. It's not true. But in a very small way, it kind of is, because like we actually are kind of exploiting the earth, and we're not really respecting Mother Earth at all. So there will be consequences. The consequences are already happening, and many people who have not created that cause, like at least directly from how we see it in this life, like many innocent people are getting their homes taken away by tsunamis and tornadoes and the climate change, you know, and all of these things. So it's like basically like the last 2 generations have really been going hardcore, you know, with the planet. Like since I think plastic was like maybe since petrol and plastic have been invented, cement. I think those are maybe like the worst inventions. Dynamite maybe too. I don't know. At least guns. That's just so sad. And it just keeps going and going and going, and I don't really know where we're going. It's scary. But I think there's a solution to all the problems. There's always a solution. It's never too late. So I think also Earth is probably very strong. It's like when we get sick, you know, we get sick, but we can endure and we can recover. So I think if we have a strong motivation and we actually start to be more aware at an individual level, like okay, let's not buy plastic bottles. Let's like keep a glass bottle and fill it up. Or like when you're living, of course, when you're traveling, it's hard. But like when you're living in your house, try to buy less plastic or spend less water. Like instead of leaving the tap on when you're washing the dishes, every time you put the dish, you turn it off. Put the dish, and then take out the other dish, turn it on again. You save some water. Little details like that. It may not make a difference, but it does make a small difference, and that's what matters. You know.
You know, coming from the commercial side, what I see is hunger is getting bigger, and we're trying to understand ourselves, and in a very small scale, like people sitting in this room, a couple, maybe 200 people. Very small scale, and you know on the other side it's just getting angrier and angrier, and I don't see it's balancing off.
Yes, extremes, very big extremes. Humans have been very extremists throughout the history. You can see that very extreme, like through violence. Violence is not really the answer or the solution. but it is a way of imposing the strength or power. Like if somebody is more strong, then the weaker person has to do what the other person does when you push. Right? So for example, like war. Normally war is not really a solution, but it's just ego, big ego, many egos. So basically what happens is that like the stronger says, okay, the weaker, I'm taking you over and you're gonna do what I say. That's it. And that's ego. It's not about helping people or saving anybody, because if you really wanted to save them, you wouldn't destroy them. You wouldn't wage a war or any of that. I think slowly now, at this time in the time of the universe, or in the time of the earth, or in the time of the humanity, the 21st century now is like really intense. Everything is becoming very, very, very condensed. So maybe even like science, technology, and even our minds, and our level of consciousness is really becoming very elevated. So everybody is like becoming more aware. And I think it's happening already. People are becoming very aware, and that's affecting the collective memory. So I think there is going to be a change in balance. Now it seems like it's going this way, but eventually it's going to change. It has to change, because that's the way nature works. That there has to be a balance. And the people who make those mistakes, knowing they're doing wrong, they will realize maybe, or maybe they won't, I don't know. But hopefully, I'm thinking maybe if the new generation, they will come up with good ideas. Like there's one kid who is inventing this machine to clean up the oceans. Or like different, like really clever children that they're just amazing. They have these amazing minds. So I don't know, maybe, I hope, that's my hope, and I think all of you also hope the same, that things are going to change to the positive, to the better way, like where people will actually say, okay, enough is enough. We want to share food, because actually 1/3 of the food that's thrown in first world countries can feed the rest of the world. Like it can feed everybody who doesn't have food. Everybody that's going hungry can be fed with 1/3 of what's being thrown away. So 1/3. So it doesn't really make sense, right? But if you look at history and humanity, nothing makes sense. Well, not nothing, but a lot doesn't make sense. Yes.
A little bit earlier, you said that our mind wants us to suffer. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? I mean, I'm thinking a little bit, we've been taught that we have to avoid suffering, and now you're saying that our mind wants us to suffer.
Yeah. So our mind tricks us into suffering.
It tricks us into suffering.
Tricks us.
But it doesn't want us to suffer.
The mind wants us to suffer. Otherwise it wouldn't trick us. I'm just like using metaphor. Okay, it doesn't literally mean that. Maybe, I don't know. But from my experience, that's how I see it. So my mind will trick me into believing things that will eventually make me suffer. Even though what I want is not to suffer.
Yeah, but it'll make you happy at the moment where you do it.
If
you follow your mind, the first
not necessarily.
Gives you a little bit of happiness. And then
Sometimes, yeah, but it's momentarily happiness. That's not real happiness.
So it's the quick fix.
Yeah, it's not a really fix. It's just temporary happiness that we think is happiness, but it's not real happiness. It's just it's sorry.
Patterns and conditioning.
Yeah.
If you get into a loop of patterns of behaviour and you want to come out of that pattern of behaviour, but for some reason you go back into it.
Let me give you an example. For example, okay, so we believe somebody did something wrong to us. Okay, so then we get angry. What we want to do is make them suffer too, or we want to, like the same way we suffered, we want to make them suffer. So then our mind says, okay, so if you say bad things to them or do something bad to them, then you will be happy because you made them suffer, right? So that's the mind tricking you into. That's how the mind works. So they make you, they hurt you, so you want to hurt them automatically. So then, when you do try to hurt them, what happens? The ball comes back to you, and it comes back 10 times more. Not through them, but through you. Because you've created an imprint inside yourself, which will create more suffering. You will actually feel bad about it. Like, I'm not talking about future lives or anything, I'm talking about like this life. Like, okay, like for example, an ex-girlfriend. An ex-girlfriend leaves you, and then you feel so depressed and so unhappy, and you suffer so much. You get so get so much frustration. Then you want to like make them know how bad you suffer. So you write bad things to them. So maybe for them it will affect them, but then it will affect you even more because you feel bad about doing that. Even though maybe consciously you don't realize that, unconsciously you're going to be unhappy. So the mind tricks you thinking that if you make them suffer, then you're going to be happy, you're going to be satisfied. But actually it's completely the opposite. So that's like one small example. Another example, for example, drugs. Okay, like for example, like I don't know, alcohol. You think, okay, let's go party. I'm going to party tonight. I'm going to drink so much. I'm going to have the best time in my life. Okay, yeah, maybe you do, but then next morning you have a huge headache and you don't remember anything. Right? So that your mind tricked you into like having that situation. I'm just putting small examples, like so that you can kind of understand how the mind works. It makes you believe something, but it's not real. It's not actually that.
But do you think that the mind is aware that it wants you to do these things or something?
I don't know. I don't think it's aware because the mind is part of you. So you are actually allowing the thoughts to fool you. Maybe even you know you're being fooled, but you want to be fooled because maybe that's the easy path, or maybe that's just the way we've been wired. I don't know. You have to find out that by yourself by observing the mind in everyday life, in everyday situation. Do people, I don't know, maybe we want pee break, tea break, or is it too long? Or maybe, yeah, do you want to come back again? Yes. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk much longer. Do you still have many questions?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, if you want, let's do a break. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. How long? Half an hour? Is good? What time is it? Okay, it's 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is free.
So, why we come back?
It's 5:30 if you want, or we can finish here. Either way. I'm lazy.
We have guys.
Okay, 5:30.
Thank you.
5:30. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for the entry.